Hey guys, welcome to Rebel Media, and we're gonna start chasing Stonewall. And so I'm in Clarksburg, West Virginia, and let's just say it wasn't what I expected. It's a pretty rough area here. I didn't expect any of this, to be honest with you. There's homeless people here. I've already been approached by this gentleman in the Cape. But the story must go on, right? So here we are. And apparently, this is the birthplace of Stonewall Jackson. Right here. It's hard to imagine, but right here, on January 21st, 1824, Thomas Jonathan Jackson was born, right here in Clarksburg, Virginia. Hard to imagine what it looked like back then, looking at it now today. His childhood was marked with significant hardship. He was orphaned at a young age, and he had lost both his parents by the time he was 7. Stonewall Jackson's father, Jonathan Jackson, had significant gambling problems, which contributed to the family's financial difficulties. Jonathan Jackson had been described as a failed lawyer with a compulsive gambling habit. This behavior left his family in dire financial straits, and after Jonathan's death in 1826 due to typhoid, his wife was left to raise their children alone. Jackson's mother, Julia Neal Jackson, was born in 1798, and she married Jonathan Jackson in 1817. Together they had 4 children, though only 2, Elizabeth and Thomas, would survive infancy. Julia was known for her strength and resilience. She supported her family by teaching school, sewing, and demonstrating remarkable determination in an era when women had few opportunities to earn independent income. Unfortunately, Julia did not have great health. In 1831, while pregnant with her 5th child, she contracted what is likely tuberculosis, then called consumption. She gave birth to a daughter, Laura Ann, but both mother and child died shortly after, leaving Thomas an orphan at the age of 7. Julia's death had a profound effect on Jackson, shaping his character with lessons in perseverance, faith, self-reliance, and despite her short life and her hardships she faced, she instilled in her son a legacy of strength and moral integrity. About a block and a half down the road, there's a Stonewall Jackson statue that was placed there in the 1950s by the Daughters of the Confederacy. Some of the people in Clarksburg have tried to have it removed, but according to Metro News, the commission rejected the proposal to remove the statue. After the passing of Jackson's mother, Thomas was sent to live with his uncle, Cummings Jackson, at a mill, and we're headed there next. Also, apparently this was the site of the Randolph Academy, and General McClellan had his headquarters right here. This site was certainly not what I had expected, but I was excited to hit the road and go through the countryside. It is a beautiful drive out to the mill. I can only imagine what it was like back then. Jackson's uncle is described as not a very particularly affectionate man, but taught Jackson to find solace in books and education. It was during this time in the young Jackson's life that he really developed an appetite for education and learning. He was often teased for his ragged clothing and his solemn demeanor, but this only seemed to deepen his resolve and his focus. His years of isolation and self-reliance gave him the traits that would define his military career later on. The early adversity shaped Jackson as a man of discipline, resilience, and a strong moral compass, traits that would earn him the name Stonewall. The Jackson Mill was located near Weston, Virginia, now West Virginia, and life at the mill was quite different from what he had known. marked by both hardship and opportunity. It was here he learned about hard work and rural life. The mill was a working farm and grist mill, and Thomas was expected to contribute through manual labor. He helped tend to animals, helping with mill operations, and the environment gave him a strong work ethic. And despite all the manual labor, he also was taught the importance of education, and he would seize every opportunity for learning, walking miles to attend school whenever possible. His love for education was evident, and he would read by candlelight long after others had gone to bed. The Jackson family was deeply religious, and this influence was strong at the mill. Thomas's faith became a cornerstone of his life, offering him solace and guiding his moral compass. The loss of both parents had left a deep emotional scar. He felt this loneliness keenly, but it motivated him to strive for success and recognition, eventually leading him to West Point. It was here that Jackson and his sister would become very close and would keep in correspondence for many years. Unfortunately, after his sister decided to take the position of the Union, their relationship deteriorated and they stopped speaking. At the age of 18 in 1842, Jackson left the mill and entered West Point, the military academy. Being basically self-educated, it was a challenge for him to get into West Point, but he got it done. He was poorly prepared academically, but his immense powers of concentration and memory, he raised his standing each year. He graduated 17th in a rank of 59 cadets in the class of 1846. Future Union General McClellan ranked second, and future Confederate General George E. Pickett ranked last. Upon graduation, Jackson joined the 1st U.S. Artillery and participated in Winfield Scott's campaign to capture Mexico City. It was here that he was promoted to major for his fearless conduct. Like many officers, he had ambition and desire for distinction, but at the end of the war, he was assigned to Florida. It seems Jackson wasn't really enjoying his life in the military at that point, and in 1851 he decided to resign from the Army, and he became a professor of natural and experimental philosophy, kind of like modern physics, and an artillery instructor at the Virginia Military Institute in Lexington. And that's where we're going next. We're here in beautiful Lexington, Virginia, and I walked here last night and went to a couple of the restaurants, just checking it out. Then I went home or to my hotel and did a little more research and learned a little bit more about the town and how Stonewall Jackson walked these very streets and walked on his way to work at VMI. And this morning we're gonna go check out his house. Down this way is Stonewall Jackson's church that he used to go to, so I thought we'd check that out too. Every Sunday afternoon, Jackson could be found in the basement of this church running a Sabbath school for enslaved and free black people. Though Virginia law didn't allow formal education for the enslaved, Jackson believed that it was his Christian duty to teach them the Bible, so he gathered men, women, and children together and taught them the scripture and guiding them patiently through the words. Jackson's Sunday school got pretty popular. For Jackson, it was an act of faith, and for his students, it was a quiet defiance of bondage and the oppression they were feeling, and a chance to hold both the Word of God and the power of knowledge and the ability to read in their own hands. This house at East Washington Street in Lexington, number 8, is Stonewall Jackson's house. He bought it in 1858 for $3,000. He got that money from an inheritance from his wife, Mary Anna Morrison Jackson, who had received that from her father. They lived here only a few years because most of the time he was on military duty once the Civil War began, and after his death, his wife eventually sold the home. The tour begins down in the basement where the kitchen is outside the garden. Jackson owned a few slaves, Albert Jackson, Hetty, and Amy. And down here in the basement, the tour guide was telling me that the female slaves would stay in the bed downstairs while Albert would either stay on the top floor or perhaps somewhere out in the garden in one of the outbuildings. They're not exactly sure yet. The upstairs is closed to the public. Coming up on our left here as we enter the home, you'll see Stonewall Jackson's study, and I guess this is where he would spend hours studying for his lectures at the Virginia Military Institute, and also what he was going to prepare for his Sunday school. And this is his actual desk, so that's a pretty cool relic right there. Entering into the parlor room across the hall from Jackson's study, this is where the family would relax, and especially on Sunday evenings, I guess this is where they would gather if they had guests, and Jackson's wife would play the piano and just kind of relax in here. Apparently that shawl on the couch over there belonged to the man who amputated Jackson's arm. That's what it was saying on the piece of paper there. Here we see Stonewall Jackson's bedroom, his rocking chair, and his coat, which you can see is blue, and that's what he used to wear going down to work at the Lexington Military Institute. Here's some of his razors. Lots of cool little artifacts. This is not the original bed, but I guess a facsimile of what his bed would have looked like back then. And that thing there at the bottom is Mrs. Jackson's chamber pot. The rocking chair. Is Stonewall's chair. The razor was Stonewall's. The case, the brush. Calling cards. Next up is the dining room or the eating area. You can just imagine Jackson having he liked to eat the same things all the time, but just imagine him sitting in here with his family and having dinner. We're back here in Stonewall's garden. This little buggy here kind of has a cool story. I guess Stonewall Jackson bought this because his in-laws were coming to visit and he wanted a way to take them around, so he bought this thing here. This is not the actual one, but I guess, again, exactly what it would have looked like. This is the beautiful VMI. I just happened to stop by on a day of orientation, and people were there with their parents, and it was like an open house of sorts. I'm not sure. It was a beautiful day to be there. But this is where Stonewall Jackson taught his rigid lectures, and the kids call him Old Tom Fool Jackson because he was boring and dry, and he would be seen praying and always being by himself outside of class. But here there's an amazing museum. I'm going to show you one part of it right now. This is Stonewall Jackson's horse, and I guess he looked kind of silly. Jackson looked kind of silly riding him because he was so tall, almost like he was riding a donkey or something. But this horse lived quite a life after the war. It stayed on his wife's farm for a while, and then as it got older, it went to the Confederate Veterans Home, and he got so old that he couldn't stand up anymore. They built a sling for him and would try to prop him up when people came to see him. Unfortunately, one of these times the sling failed and Little Sorrel broke his back and died. So he's been preserved here, and this is quite a famous piece of history to see in person. Highly recommend you guys check it out. There's also Stonewall Jackson's saddle, what he wore when he was teaching, his desk, and something else that's pretty special, but we're going to save that for the end. Even though I have visited many of the battlefields that Stonewall Jackson was at, we obviously, for time purposes, can't show videos of all those places, but I would obviously be remiss if I did not mention First Manassas, where he earns his nickname. During the chaos of January 21st, 1861, General Bernard B., rallying his own troops, pointed up to Jackson and said, "There's Jackson, standing like a stone wall. Rally behind the Virginians." And that's where he got his name. I'm sure most of you already know that, but let's do a quick shout out to that battlefield. Here's a couple clips from my phone from before I started making these videos. We're over here at the Chancellorsville battlefield. Couldn't tell the story of Stonewall Jackson without stopping by the place where he was shot. You know, they were having this masterful campaign, the Chancellorsville campaign. It's very famous. And here you can see Stonewall's doing reconnaissance right around here. This sign's talking about he was at the peak of his military career. But they say this is the spot. Just imagine the darkness of those woods that night as Jackson and his party rides through here. The North Carolinians from the 18th Regiment are hiding in the woods, jittery and fearing that the Yankees are coming with a counterattack, and they hear the hoofbeats, and they open fire. The bullets strike Jackson, 2 bullets in his left arm, shattering his bone below the shoulder. Another enters his wrist, while a third grazes his right hand. His horse rides off towards enemy lines, and Jackson is supposedly said, "By my own men." This would be the beginning of the end for Stonewall Jackson. But real quick, let's jump back to VMI so I can show you a pretty amazing artifact that I was saving for this part of the story. Next to Stonewall Jackson's horse in the display is the actual coat that he was shot in. And what's amazing about it is you can still see the bullet holes. Here's one right here. It was here, 27 miles away, at the Fairfield plantation, where they would bring Jackson to try to help him recover from his wounds. We are at the Stonewall Jackson death site. And I can't go in, it's closed, it's open one day a week. And supposedly they got rid of Stonewall's bed and the clock that used to tick in there, something I've always wanted to hear, but we're going to try to take a peek in here. I'm hoping we'll get lucky. Oh, here's the room. This is the room that Stonewall died in. I don't know if you can see, I don't know what this is getting. There's so much sun here. But you can see there's a sign in there. The bed is gone. HVAC, something. They talk about this leak, but this is the room right here where Stonewall died. Also, they removed the clock that used to tick on top of the mantle there. This is another thing I really wanted to see. I hope they bring it back. I don't know what their plan is here. But yeah, we're here. This is the first time for me. Very cool. Even if I can't get in there, you can't really see what's going on. In this window, it's just an entrance hall. There's a lot of sun. After amputating his arm, Jackson's condition seemed to stabilize, but then took a turn for the worse as pneumonia set in. Even with his wife and child there and his staff, they tried to take care of him and they sang hymns by his side. But by May 8th, his condition had worsened and delirium and fever took hold. On May 10th, his final day, a Sunday, which Jackson had said he always had hoped to die on a Sunday, he had grown completely weak, and around 3:15 he spoke his last words. "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the trees." He died peacefully at the age of 39 in this modest little plantation office. After Jackson died, his body was prepared to go to its final resting spot in Lexington, Virginia. But first his remains were taken to Richmond, Virginia, where they lay in state in the Confederate capital on May 12th. Draped in a Confederate flag and surrounded by wreaths, thousands of mourners, from soldiers to civilians, filed past to pay their respects, reflecting the profound loss felt across the Confederacy. After that, his body was placed on a special train to Lynchburg and then transported by canal boat along the James River to Lexington, arriving on May 14th. The town, steeped in grief, prepared a solemn funeral. His casket was adorned with flowers and evergreens, and he was carried to the Presbyterian church, where he had served as a deacon. May 15th, there was a final funeral held for Jackson. Then a procession led through the streets of Lexington, which brought him here, to Oak Grove Cemetery in Lexington. A place where he was happy, a place where he worked, where his home was. And he was laid to rest with a salute from the soldiers from the VMI, honoring him one last time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please be sure to like and subscribe. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate you all.